Hello, I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer with RealTime Fantasy Sports. Welcome to another edition of the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. On today's show, I'm going to be joined by Logan Glaser, once again, a contributor and writer here at RealTime Fantasy Sports. And we're going to talk about the latest TFC draft that took place on our site, the Fantasy Championship. If you can believe this, we've been having a lot of drafts go off so far. We thought it'd be fun to look at one of these drafts. Also, maybe talk about the ADP a little of these early drafts because it's kind of been set with several of them been taking place. So we thought it'd be a good time to explore them and see how people are drafting this year. So let's bring Logan on now. Logan, thanks again for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeff. It's been a pretty busy month so far with the TFC. So normally we have not launched the TFC until March 1st. This year we launched it a couple of weeks earlier than normal, and the contest is already 5% full. We're basically averaging a TFC per day so far with over 20 drafts filled.
And there's always interesting strategies with this. Do you want to draft before the NFL draft takes place, I should say, or do you want to draft after it? We've had winners both ways. Some people think it's a good strategy to do it before. You can maybe get some values there. It's definitely something to think about when you're drafting these teams.
Yeah, for sure. Last year's winner drafted in March. So, yeah, it was a couple of weeks into the year. They got that value, picked up some great rookies before their ADP boomed up. So definitely something to take advantage of.
Yeah, if you look at his roster, though, to be quite honest, I don't think it was a huge difference maker. He had Dameon Pierce, but he didn't really take him super late, so that was
Yes. Yeah,
but
Pierce
I
definitely
don't
had
know
some
if it
value
was a
going into
huge
that.
difference last year, but again, it can be though because you could definitely get some bargains. And as you'll see with this draft, all our viewers out there, there was definitely a lot of rookies taken in this draft. So let's dive into it now, Logan. So this took place on Monday night. This was a TFC draft. I'll let everybody see the draft board here, but I'll read off the first round picks and we'll kind of talk about that first round. It was Christian McCaffrey went first overall, then Justin Jefferson, Austin Eckler, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Jonathan Taylor, Kenneth Walker, Travis Kelce, Garrett Wilson, Saquon Barkley, and Travis Etienne. So what's your thoughts on that first round? What stands out to you, if anything?
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of picks that definitely surprised me by looking at this. I think the first thing that we need to talk about, though, is who to take number one overall. In most years, is kind of a consistent number one. This year, I think it could go either way with Christian McCaffrey or Justin Jefferson. I think it's kind of a toss-up between the two. I think both are about even. I think it's going to be more of a 50-50 split that we see going number one overall. I think personally, I would take Justin Jefferson, but you can't go wrong with taking Christian McCaffrey either. Both played all 17 weeks last year, or all 18 weeks. They played 17 games last year and put up pretty similar numbers with each other.
Yeah, for me, I'm probably taking Justin Jefferson as well. I just think he's the safe number one pick. His production's off the charts. He's the number one target in that offense, is a target monster, just really consistent with the way it played out last year with the running back spot. I just think it makes sense. And I never thought in a million years I'd say take a receiver first, but that's how I'm leaning this year. So what
Yeah.
else stood out to you?
Yeah, two surprise picks that stood out to me was Kenneth Walker going early in that first round, and then also Garrett Wilson. I personally love Garrett Wilson. I do think he's going to be on the fringe of a round one, round two, just because of his upside. Rookie of the year, coming off that rookie of the year. But the pick I do not like is the Kenneth Walker that early. I personally would not take him until middle of the second round. He kind of faltered out a little bit near the end of the season last year. He didn't have those big games like we were seeing during the middle of the season. So I do really like Garrett Wilson, but I'm going to be staying away from Kenneth Walker in that first round.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson's ADP right now is 20.17. So it is, in that second round range, but I don't know if I can take him in the first round ahead of, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs he went ahead of.
Yeah, even CD Lamb.
Yeah, I mean, I love an up and coming player, a guy with a lot of upside, but that worries me. We don't know his QB situation yet, so maybe if he gets Aaron Rodgers there or Derek Carr.
I mean, yeah, it is a big difference going from Zach Wilson to
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers or Derek Carr.
So that's what that owner's probably banking on there. And then you see Travis Kelce too. That's a pick that is not a surprise, but he went in the first round. I think he's going to be going a lot of first round in a lot of drafts. He kind of worries me a little bit though with his age and all the work he gets throughout the past several all the work he has gotten through the past several seasons. So while I love him and I think he's clearly the number one tight end, I don't know if I can take him in the first round. What's your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I was kind of the same way, and I actually did that last year. I don't think I had any shares of him just because I was so scared of his age, and he put up one of the best tight end stat or seasons in history for a tight end. He probably won people a lot of leagues because there was such a big difference between that number one tight end followed by everyone else. But his current ADP right now is 6.3 in TFC drafts, which I feel like that is just so early for his age at that position as well.
Yeah, totally agree. Let's talk about Bijan Robinson goes with the 5th pick in the 2nd round. So he's the first rookie off the board. Goes to the owner that took Kenneth Walker as well. We don't know where Robinson's playing. Huge talent. But again, I thought that was an interesting – I mean, you can't argue with the pick because rookie running backs tend to be one of the top 10 every year. And I think Robinson looks to be that guy this year. But I was kind of interested to see where he would go in these early drafts. And right now he's a pretty high pick.
Yeah, it all comes down to where he ends up landing on draft day with that. He's probably one of the most talented running backs already in the NFL, just based off of his skill set coming into this league. But with running backs, it all comes down to volume and how they getting into the end zone. So a lot's going to come down to where he gets drafted. If he lands in a good spot, I could see him almost sneaking to the beginning of the 2nd round. If he lands in a bad spot, then I would be probably saying beginning of the 3rd round is where I personally would be seeing him go.
Yeah, his ADP 16.46 right now. So
yeah, so kind of right in the middle of the 2nd round. So good position. He's going to move up a couple of picks. Bad position, probably move back a couple of picks.
So we saw 5 receivers taken in the 1st round. And if you look at the ADP, I believe it has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's roughly about 6 or 7 that usually are picked in the top 12 with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Adams. They're all ranked. ADP is either 12 or better. So I think people are playing it safe this year with that 1st round pick with going with these receivers. That's what it seems to look like. I think we thought that would happen, but I like the way it's playing out right now to where we can see it on paper.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like a couple of years ago, it used to be running back so heavily in that 1st round, and now it's kind of being a mix of wide receivers and running backs kind of going in that 1st and 2nd round. So it's definitely being a lot more mixed just because of running back injuries. They're not as reliable. You can also get by with drafting some backup running backs because injuries happen, and then they go off for your team. So you stack it with top wide receivers and again follow it up with some backup running backs, and you just hope for injuries that happen to their starters to get them playing time.
Yep. And the next thing I wanted to look at in this draft was when the elite QBs would start getting drafted. And that was the 3rd round. We saw 3 go off the board with Jalen Hurts going first. He was the first QB picked, and then Josh Allen, then Patrick Mahomes. Then you had Joe Burrow in the 4th round. And with the way it played out last year, the elite guys really had a pretty good point differential between the next group. So again, I don't think this is a surprise. I think this is going to end up being a trend this year with these elite guys going a little sooner than what they have in the past.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago as well, just because of how the difference between the elite quarterbacks compared to just the middle quarterbacks. There's just such a big difference between those. I personally can see some of these quarterbacks going in the 2nd round. I think the trend also, like we've been talking about with the wide receivers, is to draft these guys sooner rather than later with these and make sure you get one of those stud quarterbacks. So I personally could see these guys going almost in the 2nd round with some of these picks and how some of these leagues came out about last year with Hurts, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Burrow. They all had tremendous seasons. And then you also had Fields, Herbert, Lawrence had pretty good seasons as well. And then it's kind of a drop off after that.
What do you think you're going to end up doing at that QB spot? I mean, I look at this draft and I almost like, getting the Herbert or Lawrence in the 6th round. I feel like that might be the way I might do things this year. But again, I might have a hard time passing up trying to get one of those top 3 this year just because they're so good.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to pass up on them. I think it's all going to just depend where they fall to me in drafts. If I'm sitting in the middle of the third round and they are all three there, I might wait for one or two to be taken and then select one if you have that opportunity. So I think all three of those are kind of about even playing field between Hurts, Allen, and Mahomes in that tier one level. So if you can get Mahomes last out of that bunch, I would be perfectly fine going with Mahomes as the third overall QB taken. But yeah, I think each draft is going to be different in what you have to do with strategy wise with selecting quarterbacks.
Yeah, definitely. So, any other early round picks you want to talk about? Anything else stand out to you on this board that you kind of
Some value picks that I really like is Kenneth Gainwell going in the 11th round. We kind of been hearing about Miles Sanders. He might be dropped from the Eagles and Gainwell taking over control of that. So I really like that in the 11th round. And within the next couple of weeks, we might see a couple of drops from teams just saving up for the salary cap. There's potential of Ezekiel Elliott getting dropped. Leonard Fournette just got dropped. A lot of these players might get dropped. Jameis Winston is being talked about getting possibly dropped. Joe Mixon is also another name that is going around that he might actually get dropped from the Bengals. So the running back committee is going to be, it's going to be wide open for the Bengals, depending on if they go sign a free agent, like if they go get Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders' value would absolutely skyrocket on that offense with Cincinnati. So a lot's going to come down to what these offseason moves happen. And that's why there's so much value drafting early in these TFCs, because these values are all over the place right now, and you can take advantage of that.
Yeah, it could be good or bad, though, because you don't know how it's going to play out.
For sure. It's definitely a risk reward with drafting early. So you're either going to have a really good team looking into the season or a little shaky team.
So players returning from injury too, you got Javonte Williams, Breece Hall are the two that really stick out to me. Hall went in the third round. He went in the fourth pick in the third round. Williams went with the first pick in the sixth round. So what about the value of those guys at this point? I think it's scary coming back from those major knee injuries, but I just, again, I thought it would be something to point out for sure.
Yeah, I'm a little skeptical on selecting one of those players. I would feel more comfortable selecting Breece Hall than Javonte Williams, just because of the reports that Javonte Williams will miss at least the first couple of weeks into the season. So that's scares me away from him a lot. This is kind of looking almost like J.K. Dobbins did kind of last year. He missed a lot of time early. He actually started the season around like week 3 or 4 and then got re-injured pretty quickly and then missed a good chunk of the season. But then he came back near the end of the season and had a couple of good games. But with your taking a top 6 player or 6th-round player, you need production from them, and you cannot let them sit on the sidelines for too long. So I just don't like that.
Yeah. I actually like the Khalil Herbert pick in the 8th round, too. I think that could end up being good value for the team that picked 12th overall in this draft, too. You don't know if he could end up being that top back in Chicago, and getting him in the 8th round could be good value. Let's talk about some of these teams in general and their strategy and how they worked out. I really thought it was interesting. The third team really went heavy on the rookies. He took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rookies out of the 20 players. So he is going boomer bust. Wow. That is quite an interesting strategy. I mean, he played it safe with Eckler in the first and Waddle and Olave. Then he took Gibbs as his second running back, Charbonneau as well. He really went heavy on that rookie.
Yes, it's definitely a bold strategy to go with rookies. Usually we do see a couple of rookies just dominate their rookie season. Like we saw Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson just shoot up the draft boards in their rookie seasons last year. Now Garrett Wilson's going in the first round in this draft, and he was going probably around 9 or 10 last year, if that. So it's definitely a risk reward, like we've kind of been talking about, going with those rookies. But I personally would draft a couple rookies, but I would not go with 10 rookies.
Yeah, I would definitely think you got to get a couple for the fact that one of them could hit big in these early drafts. You don't know where they're going to be. So I think it's worth the risk. But 10, I don't know. That's a little scary. Let's talk about these teams in general now. Is there any team that you really like that you think did well in this draft?
Yeah, I personally really like Uncle Jesse's team. He's the 7th overall pick, and that with Jonathan Taylor starting out. So his team goes Jonathan Taylor, A.J. Brown, Debo, Mark Andrews, Kittle, Lockett, Kamara. That's going to be an interesting player to look out for just to see if he gets suspended. Last year, we talked about that a while, but now he's going in round 7. The value on that, Brandon Cooks, Ezekiel Elliott, Josh Palmer, and then QBs with Russell Wilson, Trey Lance, Nico Collins. So I personally really like his roster build overall. He's also got 2 great tight ends to pair that with. QB situation's a little iffy, but besides that, I really like that team.
Yeah, I like the team that picked 5th overall. Phrasing, I guess, is the name of that team. So it's Cooper Kupp, Devonta Smith, Ramondre Stevenson, Dameon Pierce, Cam Akers. Akers definitely has question marks. I don't know if he's going to be the lead back there, but he had a good finish to the season. But then Justin Herbert, Pickens, Schultz, Sanders, Darnell Mooney, Damian Harris, Cordell Patterson. So I like that team's build, at least as starters for sure. And he's got some running backs that could end up being really good. And he did not draft one in the first 2 rounds. So he's got those 2 elite receivers and then some running backs I think could hit. And he has a good starting tight end, and Dalton Schultz too. He got released and he's going to land somewhere else, but I think he could have a big role. So I think that team did well there out of that 5 hole.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really solid team. It's very well built.
Before we leave this broadcast here, let's talk about ADP, early ADP numbers. Because we're just looking at the draft here, but if you look at the ADPs, you have just 1 rookie taken in the first, looks like 55 picks, and then after that you have Gibbs at 57 with an ADP, and then again you have the receiver Jackson Smith. How do you pronounce his last name? Najee.
Yeah, you'll probably get that better than me.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it. But the guy from Ohio State is he's really good, and he's going to be a good player. But he goes 83rd overall, and then Quentin Johnson, who I think some people think is the number 1 receiver, he goes 84 after Smith. So the ADPs for these rookies aren't super high right now, but the ADP in general, anything sticking out to you? I know this is separate from the draft, but you can get to this ADP if you look on our website there. You can go to the draft guide, and it's listed in there if you want to see it, and click on TFC. But anything with that ADP stands out to you right now?
Yeah, one that kind of just stands out to me, it's more of a top tier player, is Josh Jacobs. His current ADP is 19.6. I think that's pretty late for how well of a season he did. I personally would be taking him in the middle of the 2nd round, and you're getting him near the end of the 3rd with that, or end of the 2nd with that. So I'd be taking him early 2nd round personally. Just based off the season that he had for the Raiders. I know there's a lot of question marks with how that offense is going to look, but it sounds like they're going to bring in Aaron Rodgers is definitely a possibility of going in there to replace Derek Carr. And they struggle in games, and if they get their offense clicking, especially with Devontae Adams as well, there's going to be a lot more opportunity for touchdowns for Josh Jacobs. So I really like him in that, with selecting him earlier than what his current ADP is.
I like Etienne at 17. I think that's good value for him. I love that offense. I know he just came out yesterday in the press conference, the head coach of Jacksonville, and said they want to get another back to pair with him because he likes to rotate backs. But still, he's an explosive player. That's an up-and-coming offense. I think he's a top 10 type player, and I'm excited about him this year. That's one guy I'm going to be targeting a lot. Stevenson's another guy, Ramondre Stevenson, at 26 overall. I think he could have a big season in New England. That offense should be better. They actually have an offensive coordinator that's a legitimate offensive coordinator, so that should help that offense too. So those are a couple guys that stand out to me. But overall, it's just kind of interesting to see that it's a lot more receiver heavy early on in drafts, and people are waiting on that running back. So I think it's something you have to think about when you're drafting teams, definitely for sure. I know a lot of times you see a running back there and you're thinking, wow, I can't believe he's still out there, but you don't want to miss out on those top receivers too. If these running backs are falling, you have to go by the way of the draft as well. So, it might force your hand a little bit to go earlier on receiver than you might like if you don't normally follow that pattern. But I think it's something you definitely need to pay attention to.
For sure. Yeah. And another one to bring up is Jacksonville's wide receiver group. Calvin Ridley is returning this year. So a lot of the questions is going to be kind of who is that lead wide receiver. Christian Kirk saw so much volume last year. Christian Kirk's currently going in round 5 based on this last draft, and then Calvin Ridley round 6. I know Zay Jones had a monstrous last couple of games for Jacksonville. But it's just going to be really interesting to see where these Jacksonville wide receivers end up falling throughout this offseason before we get started.
That's a great point. You don't know what Ridley's going to be like. He hasn't played in a couple of years. He's super
I know.
talented.
And with Atlanta, he was going in round 2, round 3 2 years ago before.
Yep.
So it'll definitely be a question mark to keep an eye out on.
He's just 28 years old, so he's definitely still in the prime of his career, and he moves to a great offense, but he's definitely a wild card. And Kyle Pitts, too, I noticed, has a ADP of 66, just 66.96, so just under 67. I mean, you talk about falling from
yeah, I mean, everyone was Kyle Pitts number 1, Kyle Pitts number 2 for tight ends going in the second round, and definitely have had a couple of dud seasons, which last year was kind of injury filled. But
I mean, I like him as a buy low in these early drafts because you don't know his QB yet. If he got Lamar Jackson, could you imagine that? I mean, that's one of the rumors, and Jackson loves that tight end. Look at Mark Andrews and Kyle Pitts and Lamar Jackson. That would just be phenomenal.
Yeah, it's a big difference going from Lamar Jackson from Marcus Mariota, so that would definitely help his value.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Logan, appreciate you joining me for this overview of the early TFCs. A lot of fun talking about this. I can't believe we're talking about drafts already, but they are going off, if you can believe that, and it's good to see what's happening at this point.
For sure. It's definitely fun to follow along, especially early into the season. Already 5% full. These drafts are going off probably one a day about is what we're averaging right now. So definitely make sure to get in there. $500,000 to first place.
Yeah, definitely. And don't forget our baseball stuff's going off nonstop as well. All different formats. We have our big contest too. And, spring training's happening and season's going to start in about a month or so. It's at the end of March, right? March like 28th.
Yeah, it's around there. And then we got the World Baseball Classic starting in a week. So
yeah, that'll be fun. Definitely. All sorts of stuff going on. So go to rtsports.com. Click on that Money League link, get in one of these baseball or football leagues that we just talked about. So a lot of fun drafting at this time of the year. So enjoy it. Again, thanks, Logan, for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeff.
All right, this has been Jeff Paur with RealTime Fantasy Sports.
And this has been Logan Glaser from RealTime Fantasy Sports.
Have a great day, everyone.